In our strategy, we work with a 5-phase macro framework. We are not predicting headlines or calling turning points. We focus on where pressure is building in the system, and we let signals confirm the phase we are already in. The yield curve is one of the most talked about signals in macro, and it is also one of the most misunderstood. It is not a crash alarm, it is a credit condition signal that moves early. People often ask why markets can look strong while the yield curve is inverted. That tension is not a mistake. It is the signal doing its job. In simple terms, the yield curve compares short-term government rates to long-term government rates. Under normal conditions, longer loans pay more. That reflects confidence in growth and healthy credit creation. An inversion happens when short-term rates rise above long-term rates. Short-term borrowing becomes expensive, long-term growth expectations weaken, and lending incentives quietly deteriorate. This signal is not about panic in markets, it is about stress in the credit system. When banks cannot borrow short and lend long profitably, credit creation slows, even if asset prices keep rising. Historically, yield curve inversions have preceded many recessions. That history deserves respect, but it created a shortcut that causes confusion. Inversion does not mean an immediate crash. The yield curve does not cause recessions. It reflects restrictive credit conditions. It warns early, not late. Timing problems come from treating it like a trigger. The yield curve only makes sense inside a broader framework. On its own, it lacks context. Inside the 5 phases, it becomes precise. It tells us where we are, not what happens next. In early expansion phases, the yield curve is usually steep. Credit conditions are improving. Lending incentives are healthy. Inversions do not belong there. This is where inversions most often appear. Asset prices can still rise. Volatility stays low. Liquidity looks abundant while credit tightens underneath. Policy tightening pushes short-term rates higher, long-term growth expectations soften, credit quality quietly deteriorates. The inversion reflects that contradiction. Markets staying strong during an inversion does not mean the signal failed. It means the system is in a melt-up. Prices rise while fragility increases. If this framework is useful to you, subscribing helps you stay oriented through these phases. The goal is not predictions. It is having a consistent lens when conditions change. As the cycle progresses, the inversion may persist or normalize unevenly. Stress begins to show up in specific areas. At this point, the curve is no longer new information. Later in the cycle, credit spreads matter more, funding markets matter more, liquidity plumbing becomes critical. By the time forced selling dominates, credit has already broken. The yield curve is no longer the key signal. It warned early, not late. After stress, yield curves often re-steepen. Short-term rates fall. Confidence rebuilds slowly. The inversion has already done its job. The United States experienced a very long inversion. That duration mattered. It confirmed restrictive policy and tightening credit beneath rising prices. In our strategy terms, that prolonged inversion aligned with late phase 1, a liquidity-driven melt-up, not a credit-healthy expansion. As attention shifts to normalization, it is easy to misread the signal. Re-steepening does not automatically mean safety. It often reflects stress, not growth. Quick note before we wrap up. This is educational macro analysis only. It is not financial advice. The yield curve answers one question very well. Are credit conditions becoming restrictive? That is its strength. That is how we use it. It cannot predict timing. It cannot guarantee outcomes. It cannot define severity. It is an early warning, not a trigger. An inversion raises late cycle awareness. It increases sensitivity to credit and liquidity signals. It reinforces sequencing discipline. It does not force immediate action. It does not override confirmation requirements. It does not cancel melt-up dynamics. It does not justify panic positioning, and it does not replace other signals. Yield curve inversion is not broken. It is not predictive on its own. It belongs primarily in late phase 1. It tells us where we already are. We do not need to be early. We just cannot afford to be late.